Yeah, but with that said, this is the Art of Rock, where we talk about the process and the experience of making music, brought to you by the patrons of Angelspit. Our intrepid guide, Carl Zug von Rock of that same band, can't be on the show this week, so in the meantime, I'm helping to keep it going. My name is Razi. I'm from the band You Shriek. The land I'm on has been historically cared for by the people of the Massachusetts tribe, so I'm taking a moment to honor the first people who lived, worked, and loved the Boston area long before colonization. And with that, let's get into it. There's some interesting things that we talked about a little bit as we were getting together this morning. I love to go around and sort of get a feel for what people have been focused on and interested in and excited about during the past week since we last spoke. And Brett, you seem to have some stuff that's sparked my interest too. So what's been going on?
Right. So the with what I do, I like to, like I said, put people in environments. I've always said that is a key component of what I write. In that same regard, one of those things is tricks that you can play on the mind to hopefully elicit a response. So I got interested in or re-interested in subliminal messaging, backwards masking, things like that have been used over time. And specifically, I was after techniques I was unaware of, whether they be new or things, whatever. I stumbled on that in that regard, a tool that takes a track and re-encodes it at very high frequencies. So it starts at CD quality, what is it, 44 1K.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Its mid-range was around 72K. So the concept here is that it is outside of an adult human's ability to hear. So I started messing with that, and I literally took two songs and encoded one and hit it in another song. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So one thing I learned out of that is the part of the intended goal, which is a form of stenography, the ability to hide messages and whatnot. If you know the keys to it, meaning if you knew what frequency it was encoded at, then you could decode it and retrieve that other song as well. The other thing that I found interesting, though, was when I wasn't even trying to make it subliminal, I just wanted to see what happened. So I asked ChatGPT about creating a list of samples based on a song that I'm working on. And it handed me a Python script that literally allows me to then generate spoken samples. It works very much like a plugin I use in FL Studio, but the advantage, I would say, is that I can hand it an entire script right away, and it can sit there and spit out this entire whatever. For my purposes, I grabbed this thing, which is it's called about 30 seconds long, threw it in Audacity, and hit it with this plugin I found called Subliminal. That's the encoder, by the way. I had it playing just by itself after encoding it. Full volume, and the only times in which I could hear anything is if I actually clipped it, in which it made, in clipping it, you ended up getting a distortion, and then you could kind of hear it. But the fascinating thing is like if I'd had this at any other frequency, an audible frequency, I'd have been blasting the entire house. It's like, okay, let's see what this actually does in terms of pressure. And so it was actually really, really neat. I thought that was.
I want to pivot into how that manifests in the finished work too. Like I think there's a moment there, the pure creativity in the play. The two things that I would love to jump in on, and Ivan and Diana, if you have anything to comment too, this would be a good moment to jump in. The things that come to mind are, one, you discovered aliasing, the very bane of our, like, why we have a Nyquist frequency at 44 instead of 20 where we can actually hear stuff is because once you start, turning the upper frequencies into aliases of their 1 octave down or some, then you hear them. They're in liminal space, not sub or superliminal. And that leads me to just, like, here's a fun argument for all of us to duke it out with is I am staunchly 100% of the mind that if you can't hear it, then you can't hear it. And there is no effect that has on the apparatus of sensation and thought and stuff. However, who fucking cares? The creativity process and the steganography and the hiding messages, that is rich with avenues and directions and interesting ways to go. And you can come out with stuff. Oops, I should have shifted it down 2 octaves aliasing, and now it sounds like crusty grit, even though it was a imperceptible message that nobody could hear. But there is a gulf between encoding hidden messages that somebody could decode. And that leads me to the other thing that I wanted to sort of mention that is exciting about this is having a microphone that actually is capable of picking up 88, 96, kilohertz audio or up into the 120s. You get this environmental stuff. There are birds and insects and maybe mammals, I don't know, that emit these sounds that are above the frequencies we can hear. And this isn't that I'm saying they're subliminal. I'm saying they're inaudible. We don't get to sense them. And I had this experience in one of the Saturday courses that I took as a kid at the Boston Museum of Science, where the lecturer had a high frequency microphone and a high frequency tape recorder with the circuitry could handle up in the double what we hear kind of frequencies, what dogs hear, so to speak. And he shifted them down, and there was just this world of other sounds, and you can hear them as they're shifting down. He speed ramped it so that you could hear them shifting. So these things that are inaudible start becoming like, and then they're down into this mid-range. And one of the most classic things that we see in this is when you slow down bird song and the octave up stuff comes in, and it's this very melodic contours that you can follow rather than these bursts of tone. Anyway, I think there's a lot in there, and I think it's a fascinating area to be talking in. And that brings me back to the question, did you come out with stuff that you used, and was this inspirational, and did you carry it on, stuff like that?
I have not implemented this yet, and I tend to agree with you about, if you can't hear it, you can't hear it. And, realistically, if I wanted to be malicious, then there's far easier means to do so. For me, it's more about the lore, in that regard, when I'm writing songs, I'm letting the bad guy play. So why not put elements in there that, if I'm not trying to hurt anybody with it, but if
you'll get taken to court for that, right? And people will accuse you of ulterior motives. And
but at the same time, it's kind of like voodoo. If I tell you I've put a curse on you, then you psych yourself out. And yeah, I mean, if I throw something into that's the interesting element. I haven't done it, but the interesting element of it for me is like, okay, now here I've done a couple of proofs of concept. If someone was really curious, they could throw this on a spectrograph, and they could absolutely identify the channel, and then they would know exactly what they needed to decode. It's right there. But now I've given you something to find.
Yeah.
And I am working. These are things that I'm working on. I do have an idea of something I would like to create, but I've never figured out exactly how to do it. And that is a song that can play forward or reversed, be the same melody and rhythm, different lyric tracks.
Wow. I've seen it in one example, and this is a very different practical method. A Mobius strip of the music in a music box, so that it's continuous, but also has to be palindrome. Now I'm losing that sense of I thought I had exactly how they put this together, but this is the example I've seen, and there are definitely some precedents for this.
Where it came from is the stylization of Illuminati, where you can flip it. Um, there's also a lot of those things where you flip something and you get a different word, based on how it's layered. Um, and it always kind of seemed neat to me that if I could create a sort of Ouroboros where, yeah, it can play as literally side A and side B, and the thing that changes is maybe what you hear as far as the lyrics. I think that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, I hope we get some actual audio results of this stuff, and you can carry it on and keep doing it. I have at least a healthy appreciation for audio illusions and the I forget the name of the woman that did a lot of research maybe 20 years ago that has a whole bunch of published illusions and examples of them, and I'll try to look it up maybe while I'm ignoring somebody talk or searching the web instead of engaged in conversation. But there are plenty of which thing gets primacy, whether it's the intelligible one or not, and which things mask which things. And there's lots of like solid research on that to play with. Ivan, Diana, I would be really interested in if you've either enjoyed or played around with hidden messages and the idea of adorning your work with something that's not apparent on the surface and that is left to the listener and viewer to pick up later. Does that strike anything in your work?
I won't say subliminal messaging as much as in DJ sets, and I'm talking radio DJ sets, or even the sets on MTV TV. There will be a through line, whether it's a theme that I hadn't said, but something that connects them together. And some people will get it, and some it'll pass them by. Sometimes it'll just be like a color that weaves it through, or a phrase that weaves it through. Um, and I don't want to say subliminal, but an overall arching theme
Mm-hmm.
that ties the set together, if that makes sense.
Can you think of one particular example that's not giving away too much?
Uh no, I mean, one was really obvious where it happened to be that the music videos that were submitted, there were like four of them with either Ghost in the title, or
Ah,
Ghost was
yes.
part of the album title or something.
Well, that's a
Oh,
perfect one for this situation, I would say. It goes-
yeah, and then one was about transparency. So it just like the whole set. I didn't put it out there. It just that's what people submitted, so that became the theme of the show.
Fair. I think that's good fertile ground for that kind of creativity where there's another level to it. Ivan, what you got?
I have a couple of thoughts. First, okay, if you can't hear it, you can't experience it. Not
Unless it
like
smells really bad.
not exactly. I mean, like there's been a lot of like, research into low frequency stuff. And, down at those like, inaudible low frequencies, you know, you you don't experience it, but you do.
I think you do. I think it's fair to say that high energy, low frequency sound moving the air is something
Yes.
we don't perceive something oscillating below about 20 times per second as sound, but we feel a breeze. And that's like
Yeah.
0 hertz. It's just air moving, It might not be
It's just
periodic, but yeah.
the but like 19 hertz has, like as it turns out is, you know, it does stuff to our brains. Um, what exactly it does is I think still kind of up for debate. And also like generating sounds down below 20 is in fact actually like that takes work,
Hmm.
and it's difficult to do. And more importantly, you're not just going to like record a song with components at 19 hertz and then like hand that tape off to somebody else and have them experience the same thing, because it becomes highly equipment like requiring at that point. And most people, they're most people just won't be set up to actually like have it reproduced in their environment and
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
and get that.
So that it takes more wattage, literally, to produce a tone of the same
Exactly.
subjective volume at 19 or 25 hertz that it would to take, a relatively low amount of power to create one at a higher frequency in the mid range of 440,
And
1000.
yeah, and like the way that like our senses and brain really like enjoy and appreciate and can see all the detail in the music is in the mid range.
That's where
Um,
speech lives.
yeah, and for a damn good reason, because that's where we're gonna notice it. Um, so like one of the things that I've been looking at like doing now that all of my construction's going on is actually building a set of like 8-inch mid-range sealed speakers for the new setup on the other side of the room here, because that's going to make mastering and mixing and just getting things going. It's going to make things a lot easier because I'll be able to really
Be able to hear
focus
it.
on those I'll be able to hear it. Whereas like my current studio monitors they're trying to be full range, and they're pretty good at it, but having really good mid ranges would be a game changer for me.
There's there's something exciting about bass, low bass, that we're touching
Yeah.
on here. Like, there's a little audio ID for the video channel Nebula that has just a tone under it. Like it's a sparkle in the high frequency range with a low tone under it at maybe 25, 30. And it doesn't do anything other than fade in and fade out. But when you hear it on the phone, and then you hear it on maybe your television's built-in speakers, and you hear it on, then you switch to some headphones that actually reproduce that sound, and you feel the weight of that. It's a really profound, like for me anyway, I respond to that in a much more embodied way. Like it makes me stop. It's arresting. It makes me pay attention to the sound. And this is just a little, like 2-second stinger that goes at the end of their videos. So I think that there is predictable results. Maybe it does differ by person, but certainly weighty and energetic sounds that carry from a distance, in low frequencies are like, oh, there's something ominous going on. We've got like a size kind of component to it.
Hey, to that same point, yeah, I've actually, made a parabolic mic of sorts. What I did is I took a 5-gallon bucket, hung one of these in it, and I was after capturing the sound of thunder, so it worked perfectly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah.
Right. I used that. I also used a recorded sound of an earthquake. Take those and jack up the low end. Basically, almost cut the mids, kind of like you would do our stuff anyway. You want the highs just enough to so that the brain knows something's wrong. Those lows coming through like that, they speak to you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you can actually bury it pretty low in a mix. And it doesn't have to be a primary thing, but the way it comes across, is one of those. It is straight up audible at that point. You're not trying to do anything. It's just almost like marketing.
There's a reason the 808 is such a classic of a drum machine. I mean, there's ones that have been more useful, and there's ones that have been more used and represented, like certainly Lindrum and maybe the Roland R8 have these iconic things. But the 808 is a lore. It's a thing of, people's obsession and stuff. And that bass representation from the kick drum is no small part, I'm sure. Like people build entire sound systems just to represent that, cars and stuff. Brett, do you mind sharing a little bit more about how you worked with the LLM, with the chatbot to put the script together? It's interesting to me, and it may turn people off, but I think it leads into like what is good about having these tools at our disposal when they link to creativity like that.
So it really started organically. So I'm working on a song called Leviathan, and it started by using ChatGPT to start kind of building images, and because I'm only borrowing certain elements of the historical or mythological Leviathan. I'm trying to keep the character but sculpt it into my world. So it really kind of started as, okay, I want this thing to be more like this. I want this thing to be more like this. And then as I'm going through it, I'm looking for samples, sounds. I'm considering other things that can play in the background that can further reinforce that. Here comes this monster from the sea. It's going to end you, and that's all there is to it. And so it's a monster flick. So I start going down that rabbit hole, and in terms of doing that, I've got a pretty well built out song at this point. So it starts becoming, what else can I do in those little spaces in terms of atmosphere? And so that's what led me down, okay, well, maybe I can sneak something in here subliminally, or just small enough that it's like, hey, what the hell was that? And because these little details, when you do that, they do, they make you, for example, if I go and I grab a recording of like a rabbit getting hit by a hawk, it sounds like a baby crying. But it's off enough that humans suddenly get really interested. Like, did I just hear a baby? Or what happened? You can use a phone, old phone, like ring, ring, bells and things like that are ways of calling attention. But that's what I'm trying to do. So long story short, this thought process is what led me down that rabbit hole. I haven't implemented it yet because really I got sidetracked by the other coolnesses of it.
Yeah, that's part of play. That's part of the enjoyment of the craft, of the creativity, of the keeping in the work. There's a lot to it that I think is super powerful, and I appreciate that novelty, getting introduced by the tools that we use has been sort of a theme, I think that we all respond to. And if it's not a partnership between you and the tools, one of the uncanny things about chatbots is they do seem like like they have agency. As you're using them, they reintroduce ideas, they present them back to you in a way that you're likely to respond to, because that's what they're designed to do. They sound like a person talking, and when they do that,
the most useful part of that whole thing that came out of that is a potential thing to be able to share, is literally that script that sits there and says, well, cool, if you want to say this, how do you want to say it? Pump that out.
it's like a hound party over there.
Yeah.
If the dogs allow it, the other wrap-up question maybe toward the same topic. When you get the script out, are you just running it on the console in Linux, or can these creative tools be brought into your FL Studio and run as plugins so that you've got a permanent and real easy go-to kind of tool?
No, this actually, so it's running on a Windows platform. I actually installed Python, PyCharm, and I'm running it through PyCharm. So what it is they actually
Alex has introduced a lyric into the chat that is very appropriate. I'm not going to read it, but it has to do with the canine call sounds that we were hearing.
Yeah, that crashed me pretty good. Good job. So it literally is just a script that's running in PyCharm. The cool thing about it that I saw is that, okay, here's something that got actually generated on the computer. So there's no sampling issues. There's no,
Yep.
it's like
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
no,
That's
I can hand you the genesis of this sound.
strong. My I would love to have some sort of permanent tools that I'm making that are more tailored to the thing. And I know I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago that I was thinking of ways that talking to our DAW and describing things in our own creative words could open up possibilities, could make things easier, faster. They could help get us over the hurdles of the parts of the work that we don't really enjoy so much. And whether that's, feeding it all your lyrics and asking it to iterate on what you've done, but make it better, or feeding it all of your chord progressions and saying, here, this is getting boring. What's a new, kind of key change or cadence, or, get me out of chord loops, get me into progressions or something like that. There's things that this is, for me, the distinction is it's better than doing it in a search engine, because the search engine doesn't feed it back to me like I'm still in the same conversation. The search engine presents a page of lots of ways to go, and I find that gets in the way of staying with the project. Whereas if I'm already in a conversation with the bot and the bot is still talking about the same topic, I can say, hold up, feed that back to me one at a time. Let's have a conversation about key signatures and what I've used in the past. Look at this. Tell me more. And yeah, it's a different way of setting it up. And also hopefully a different way of stimulating creativity is the point, certainly. But I just wanted to give Alex a chance to chime in. I know you jumped in the middle of conversation and dogs barking, but the greater topic being where did we start with this? Subliminal steganographic messages being put into your music, and also using the chatbots to create tools and sounds that work in that context. Do you have anything to add? Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing relatively well. I think there's lots of things to go to. The first thing that comes to mind is that I think Skinny Puppy put messages of hope into their music subliminally, because they knew that their music was used to torture people. So that was like their, I don't know, something they brought into their
Yeah.
music
I
in
mean,
order
that's an
to.
absolute subversion of, first of all, how they sound on the
Mm.
surface, and also the purpose of the music, and what we traditionally expect subliminal or buried messaging to do.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of supposed satanic messages in like Beatles records or something. Yeah, and when it comes to AI tools, I don't know. I'm still not very warm. I'm still like I usually just use it to see how good it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
The coolest thing that I think I could do is to just tinker with it and make it weirder. But I haven't come to that point. I think I already talked about it, but there has to be a way to change the wiring so that it's like something I want to try sometime in the future. But I have.
I think that's a really interesting way of doing it, and it relates very much to how we push the synths and patches and hooking things up in incorrect ways to cause them to do things that we don't expect. And man, if it gets you outside of thinking like of trying to jailbreak and corrupt the chat bots, there's a ton of examples of how to get them to give you trippy ass weird shit back, and it's an interesting path, again, in the service of creativity. I know I'm drilling that home to try not to get too far afield with all of the things people tend to be excited about these tools, but getting you out of where you expect it to go, and certainly chat prompt crafting to get them to hallucinate and do weird stuff. Have you embarked on any of it yet, or is it just something you're looking at as a path?
It's just something I'm looking into. I haven't installed a machine learning environment in like 3 years now, so maybe just need to maybe spend tomorrow or something on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, if you're running them locally, then the world's your, I don't know, whatever
Yeah,
mollusk you choose.
to
That's
be honest, in terms of running it on someone else's server, I'm just too self-conscious to get my stupid scrap into the cloud of somebody else that's like used for whatever, I don't know. So I would be much more comfortable running it locally.
Hey, that actually segues into a topic that was also on my mind, and that is that distinction between what you portray and how you think of yourself and what you're willing to think to yourself versus what gets put on the permanent record. And I know you're talking about a system that is built on scraping all the information that we've ever shared with each other and somehow making that permanent record of everything we've said into something useful. But this is to simplify it a little bit. Before I get lost up in my own head, Tina Fey said something really, really interesting on a video podcast that I was watching, and I just saw the clip, and I can't remember where it came from. It might have been a music creator video that I was watching, but authenticity is dangerous and expensive. And you know, she really hit something on the head there, which makes me think of two very sort of discrete directions. One, the LLMs and neural nets are trained on our lack of authenticity. They're not necessarily built on us being our private selves internally. They are built on our performative output, our outside voices, our display versions of our own peacocking selves primarily, because that's what ends up being out there. We don't know how much Google has shared our private email and trained their stuff on that. So maybe there is some amount of it anonymized, of course, whatever. But this plays into what you're talking about like the minute you start bearing your soul to Chappie G as your therapist, it's like, okay, now that's in the corpus, great. But that being said, do we collectively and severally and individually have an idea of what this permanently putting your stuff out there as yourself versus filtered through your creative work means? And if there's a distinction or difference or something meaningful to you, Alex, please go ahead.
Well, to counter your point, I think anonymity has made internet users show the side they probably wouldn't if the real name and identity were attached to them. So I think that is well captured.
I think that's an excellent point. Very well
Yeah, however,
taken.
there are like certain steps in the creative process, especially for lyrics, that I feel like really embarrassed about, because there's something coming out of you and you think like, wow, that's really from me. I don't really like it at all. So I'm really self-conscious about that. I think that's like the stepping stone.
I feel that. I mean, there's obviously a tradition of backstage versus on stage. I mean, that's a thing that we've sort of made an artifice around simulating backstage as a performative endeavor. I mean, like, even, I don't know, live albums are multi-tracked, overdubbed affairs, and they always have been. And it's not like being at a show where people can experience a one-time performance. They're multi-track, mixed and produced. And VIP experiences are beyond the velvet rope. And if you meet your artists in person and go to these sort of produced events, it's not certainly a piece of their personal life. And the other sort of piece of this that came up was, can you be truly successful as an artist, like at the highest levels, with not having a filter, like being authentic and talking about things that are truly meaningful. And Lindsay Ellis had a video essay on why Tori Amos is not hugely successful. She talked to some younger people and they're like, who? I think I might have heard of that name. And she's got a huge body of work, but she talks about some painfully revealing stuff right from the very beginning. And when I say talks about, she writes lyrics about things that have happened ostensibly in reality to her, with very few of the details changed. And I don't know, I think maybe that has something to do with which artists we elevate to the highest levels. They're entertainers, they're not pundits, and they're not personal commentators. Does that mean anything to anybody? Do you feel that when you're busy creating your work? Does it enter into your songwriting thing when you decide what you're going to do on YouTube or TikTok or anything, Alex? Oh, you're muted, so I just waiting to hear your voice there.
Sorry.
Okay.
I subscribe to the philosophy of picking your battles when it comes to messaging. So not talk about everything, but just pick what's really important to you and then stick to that and grind it to or file it to a sharp blade instead of like a blunt club in every direction. I don't know.
I think so too. No, I think that is the difference between just being a blabbermouth and being an artist. Certainly is honing those things and putting it into either a palatable or succinct message, or doing something more than just saying stuff. Brett?
My kind of approach to it is kind of, so it recognizes first of all that, you know, your best lyrics and that kind of stuff are going to be something that are personal to you. So the way I kind of imagine them, it's like, well, what if Freddy Krueger wrote these lyrics? You know, and then I don't know, it sets it aside somehow for you, and allows that character to just be. And for me, that takes some of the sting out of it.
I would agree. I feel that. Like, I remember especially anything slightly more charged, or if there's a political subtext or a social commentary subtext, taking on a character that is saying these things and envisioning that character fully and giving them a little bit of a backstory and making them breathe goes a long way to freeing you to speak as them and exploring these ideas. And I think I've said it before, but I find it like really baffling how artists like maybe it's they're full of themselves, but they can just say these things that sound personal and are ostensibly about them, autobiographical, right there in the song. I mean, especially if there's people involved that they're talking about, whether it's a diss track or a heartfelt message of something complex that they're saying about them. It's really like I find it's a lot easier to spend a month couching the narrative in something that's just all metaphor than it is to just say expression of love, expression of dissatisfaction. It's a strange phenomenon. Ivan, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, we think about ourselves as individual people being an individual person. But, the reality is a lot more complicated than that, because we are not the same person under different circumstances.
100%.
And entertaining is one of those other circumstances. And so, we need to kind of be okay with being, not exactly ourself while we're doing that, because we need to be somebody else to say some things. Say some good things, say some bad things. We're still speaking. And was it I don't remember the name of the artist? Like, there are plenty of examples out there of artists, writing songs, to complain about other artists out there at the same time. man, it's right here. I can't remember.
We don't need names. This is like the
Yeah.
whole point of this thing is sometimes you're
Like,
not comfortable just,
one of them's super famous though.
hey,
Just not famous enough for me to remember.
yeah, exactly. Fame doesn't always keep you at top of
Yeah.
mind. That's
But like it is a thing that we do. Because we don't I used to read cable carried news once a week for a cable carried news channel back when I was in high school. And the person I was in front of that camera couldn't have been the person that I was when I was not in front of that camera, so I had to be a different person. And like, was it a better person? Was it a worse person? I don't care. What it was the person that could do that and do it well. And so I did, and then did it well. And then the camera would go off, and boom, I was back to just being me.
well, one of the
Or more
things that I
importantly, I
know
was back to
everybody,
being me in that crowd
yeah.
of the rest of the people.
I totally feel that. I was going to say one of the things that I know that at least for a couple hours a week, all of us right now are doing is considering what we're going to leave for posterity. I'll speak for myself, and that as I listen to myself talk while the camera is rolling and we're streaming live with the 17 seconds of delay, might look over at that screen and see myself saying exactly what I just said, and then possibly watching comments on it in real time to people that I don't know where they are, don't know when the next person's going to hear it, is a different angle on just I'm talking to y'all also at the same time.
Yeah.
The conceit of our conversation being to each other, but also with the public listening. And that's it's not uncomfortable, but it is something that I find myself being conscious of. Even just the way I'm modulating my voice right now to talk about that is different than I would talk about it if I was just sitting on the couch chatting with one person one-on-one. If you don't mind me asking, Diana, do you find this in scripting your shows that there's a conscious effort of what you're putting out for posterity? I know that your comedy writing has a certain tone, and also the way that you're representing the artists that you have on the show probably takes some consideration. Does this enter into that work?
It does. I will start with I seriously was less of a public persona. I mean, I did radio DJing.
Radio DJing is pretty much, I mean, it's limited in what you're going to do, but it is the exact, this is what we're talking about.
Yep. Like here's my taste. Like if you like it or not, here's what I like. And but then it started that way, and then it was like, well, what's interesting, what's out there, and it forced me to create dig, and it slowly developed. Like you could listen over time as to how my tastes have changed and how I was looking at music and what was out there changed over time.
I mean, it's a diary of sorts, you're leaving
really
yourself a
is.
journal.
It really is, and I probably should have done that. It's probably recorded somewhere.
Don't you have paper playlists from 1987 through 92? I mean, log sheets?
Digging in a box somewhere that my mother kept, maybe. But anyway, we started MTV TV, and it was totally like being completely honest and saying, look, we've got this idea. It started as a joke, actually, Adam can tell you that, but just to our friends, hey, this is what we'd like to do. These are the parameters in which we're going to, we want to start a music video channel. Okay, do you have any videos? Like, and the first letters out, I mean, I've done corporate and management positions, so I kind of knew how to word it. But to me, I could see like those first letters out to just our friends. It's like, it was just like, hey, you got a video? And over time, it was becoming more and more confident with it. So
Sure.
The reality of it showed, and we've honed it and refined it and how to request. But ultimately, the entire channel is based on, I just ask for a video, and if somebody sends it to me, great. And if somebody doesn't, well, then I can't be that upset about it. I just like, if they send it, great. We're not going to play it if they don't send it to us. We set that boundary at the beginning. Like, didn't want to touch copyright. So if they didn't send it to us, we're not playing it, straight up.
But this is like what sort of set the parameters for your creativity in the work. I mean, you've got taste and personality and, let's say, leisure, pleasure, fun. I mean,
it's fun
when you're creating the thing.
Yeah. But then, yes, it did set parameters. Like, okay, once we started doing instead of just putting up a new video every time it came on every couple hours, like, okay, we've got to, like, once a week, because it got to be too much. Like, just adding videos whenever they popped up, got to be too much. So came up with once a week. And then that did set parameters, because all of a sudden it's like, well, now I have to put together a playlist based on what was sent. I can't pick a theme. I can't choose what genre. It's just here's what you got to work with, make something of it.
Well, even that is a type of creativity. I mean, it requires your professionalism in creativity to make it, to cultivate it, to curate it. You know, like you've got, whether there are parameters being formed just by who you choose to interface with and what you say, and if there's anything you reject. I don't know if you do, but this is like, that's the creative work in this. I was trying to form a little bit of an idea of like professionalism with yourself, you know, like taking seriously what you do and giving the creative work the right persona. And this is where the idea of who you're being, even in private, with just yourself.
That's been a work in progress for the last 4.5 years of taking ownership of being program director. Like, okay, you're program director, you start the channel off, like, because this is what I do. I'm good at the management side of things and the putting together the bare bones of the things so that the rest of it can flourish. And it was just like, okay, and I'd be, messaging Adam back and forth, like, is this okay? Like, can I, like, and over time it's like, well, I'm the program director.
Right. It's okay. Did you say it's okay? Then
did I say it's okay? Diana is okay.
Yeah.
So that growth has been, I've watched it on the show. But then we hit a point where, like, it felt very, like, once I took ownership, okay, like, I want this to flourish. I know how it needs to flourish. I need to not only just promote it, but send out individual promotional images for the individual bands to spread to their fans and let it grow that way. And so it was me understanding, and since the beginning, like, it's grown, and we've come to realize it's bigger than just us. The channel's not about Adam and I. The channel is the community. Community has grown up around it. And being in a community, I'm looking into my brain, you're interacting, and you're sharing of yourself with the rest of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you are authentic in that, the stronger the connection.
I think that there's an interesting amount, maybe more room for this authenticity that we're talking about, tempered with professionalism. Yes, when an artist is talking to a program director about getting their video thing on. I mean, I know that I used to definitely do this. I used to, like, just do business letter kind of behavior when I was writing to a label or to a radio station DJ that I wanted to get on their show, just, dear sir kind of stuff, and keeping it very performative in that way. Like, I didn't let just the hanging out kind of Razi be in the picture for those things. And I've certainly, since I think I do a lot less of that, and I am a more authentic person, because I'm not seeking these opportunities with naivety as much. I'm trying to form relationships, as you're talking about, and if we have a like mind, is a natural thing. And I think that is part of that distinction of being that friendly to yourself when you're in the moment of should I be working now, and listening to your own duality, it's a tough thing, and I'm saying that in service of somebody who's I haven't been my output has been pretty subdued, low, not doing a lot of production work and creative output in the past several months, on and off. So it's a little bit, other personal side of things on that front.
What along those lines? Like,
Yeah, sure.
You start off it with the professionalism, and you're back and forth like, these are the specs for submitting a music video. This is what we need from you. We need this, this is what we need to make this happen. Thank you very much for supporting that level. And some people that's all they want, but then you have to read into it, because then you get into, and it's mostly via email, but over time, the returning artists you build a rapport with, and all of a sudden you don't have to be quite as formal, and then you're more like your personal self shows through quite a bit more.
It's an interesting path. Like we're talking about so much more than just like what do you put on TikTok, and
Right.
obviously Chapel Roan is a good example right now for people who are finding their ways between authenticity and performative, as a costume and mask kind of artist who also gets on TikTok and talks about their actual shit in what seem like very authentic terms. Still don't know any of their songs, but I'm very aware of what they're doing in that way. And I think it's the tension between their authenticity and performative theatrics that I'm cluing into. Hey,
I'm trying to find the words for it, because there is it's a disconnect. How do I put it? Okay, so just because I have the rapport with the artist does not mean we're best friends. Like, we've built the rapport, we can, be a little bit joking back and forth, but it's, what I'm saying? So there's still that little bit of a distance. Some people have become friends over time, but there's still that professionalism, like, that's your world of what you do, this is my world of what I do.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. As I've personally, back in the Usenet days, as somebody who has been put on blast by a relatively known, popular enough figure that I had worked with professionally for stuff that I was doing in my personal life, I'm just realizing that I probably have some sensitivity to this entire topic that I am just now noticing I should own. But yeah, like I was definitely, I think I handled it in the best way I could. And, I was generous and not vindictive or angry about what this person revealed and said. And man, I'm just going to have to shut up and then think about that before I freeform talk about things on a permanent recording that we're going to put on the internet. But anyway, it's something more to think about. Ivan, Alex, do you have anything you want to put a piece of punctuation at the end of this topic? I think there's always more to talk about it, but we seem to have come to a.
Can I make one more?
Yeah, and then Alex can go.
Okay.
Of course.
Which was, it kind of developed into, now I'm not saying, that there's different, it's kind of an intuition, and you kind of have to, it's building rapport over time. But the other thing I was going to say was, my Instagram, I could not, I started posting about being on dialysis when I started, just as a recording it from my own self. However, in between those posts were, okay, the show is still going to go on, even though I'm going through all this. And I didn't, it wasn't an oh, poor me thing. It was here's what's going on. If it can help anybody else, great. This is what happens when you're in this situation. But it kind of ended up getting commingled with my work on MTV TV. And then people followed me and started following that story along with oh, you're still doing this while you're being, while you're sick, you're still doing this, you're still moving on. And that gave, personality to just a bland Instagram page. It was a, like, this is me. Like,
I'm glad you brought it up. That's certainly not for me to bring up about your life, but that is absolutely 100% the exemplar, the example, the performance of authenticity in your personal life and how it overlaps with the creative world. And if I could just push 1 millimeter further, did you feel as you were creating this deeply personal and, I mean, it could be compromising, kind of material for the internet to see. Did you think about what it meant and how did you temper your delivery, if so?
I tempered my delivery in the aspect of, it wasn't, I was trying not to be too emotional about it. I was trying to be more factual about, like, today this happened at dialysis, or today I feel this way because when you're on dialysis, this and this, how it affects your body. And just mostly trying to be more informative.
Yeah, successfully too, I might add. And that's like sort of the gulf span maybe between Brett's monster characters and your monster of the process, that you're battling in the same way, where you set those parameters and you can flesh out a story to tell based on the grand battle of good and evil. Alex, help. I was going weird there.
Yeah, at least for me, I don't feel I'm being inauthentic when I'm being more formal. I think it's just a different side of me,
Good point.
but it's still me. And the second thing, I really have a problem with putting stuff out that's too personal because as a child in school, I was bullied, and it was also drilled into me to keep as little information about you on the internet because it can be used against you. And that's still something that's really deep into me. And I have like this really good promo picture of me with a MIDI keyboard. And I wanted to post it like 3 times, but I always, when it comes to push the button, I always just delete it and go on. And I think I will post it eventually, but it's something like deeply ingrained into me.
My dude, that is so well said. I know exactly what you're talking about and that kind of second guessing, but I will say, I don't know. If you don't have haters, then you're not doing anything. That kind of bullshit. I mean, there's that aspect of it, but also you get to construct your professional side, and it is part of you. It's a thing you liked, it's a thing you did, and putting it out there, as in posting it in public or making a permanent record of something that you created, even though it's a depiction of yourself. Yeah, you get to do that now. It's like, it's a weird, long process to start considering yourself as somebody with agency and power creatively and personally, and that line between the different parts of yourself that are publicity and professionalism and creative and personal and pulling the levers and making the right balance of it all. That's how it's dangerous. Or Tina's words, it's dangerous and expensive to be authentic, and sometimes you do have to make that investment and take those risks, but it's a process. Brett, talk to me.
Yeah, and being authentic it takes a lot of different forms, especially when you start talking about it being art at the end of the day. You're already taking something that's personal and very subjective. At the end of the day, you're trying to share whatever that image or that thing you enjoy is. I think that's really it at the end of the day. And it's like, I don't know, it's I guess if someone came to me and they'd be like, well, hey, Brett, those lyrics you wrote, on that song, man, those were abusive. And I'm like, what did you expect a demonic entity to sound like? So, and I mean, there's power in these characters, and even if you are your own character, um, you're putting yourself out there as your name. Um, it doesn't mean that your audience is actually getting the entire scope of reality. So your
Hell
haters
yeah.
are just, unfortunately, quite limited. And I don't know, from my perspective, maybe I haven't, or maybe I've had enough of them or not enough of them. I don't know, but yeah, I think they're more of a measure of success than
Oh
than
yeah, yeah,
a
very much so. I would agree. One of the things that comes to mind as you're saying that is that I think I've said this before too, that when people see actors being away, they know that it's a press junket if they're trying to just talk about the movie, and they know it's a character if they see them up on the screen or on the TV doing the thing, and we feel their work that way. But when our favorite artists sing to us, we really feel like they're singing from themselves to us, not because the director wanted it that way or the producer in this case, not because they had a collaborative lyric, doctor come in and fix the thing, but because it sounds like that's sort of the conceit with most types of vocal pop rock alternative music. Is it sounds like the person singing is, maybe it's an alter ego, but it feels like them, and it feels very attached to the person singing. And I certainly think of that when I go to write something. It's consonant. It's in concordance with that fact that I'm expecting people to think that I wrote these lyrics. And maybe it's not something that happened to me, but it's certainly me saying them anyway, as the author, the originator of these ideas funneled through, a production process. Hey, anybody else want to jump in at the end of that? Or are we kind of, Ivan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that is kind of, really how these, the audience is going to, consume these ideas. And I think that the better of a job you can do at like maintaining that feeling, that perspective that you're singing to them, I think that is that's highly, like, it's super valuable, like, because it works. And the music is a very direct communication from the artist to the listener, and uh, it is being filtered because you as the artist are filtering it through being an artist to the listener, and then the listener is also, like, they're filtering that yet again as a listener and how they feel about what you're doing, and then converting it to where they're at with it. So being able to, like, manage that relationship is kind of key.
I think it's important. It's sometimes an obstacle, but it's always there. Getting up in your own head about, being judged and deciding whether you're going to post that thing, and it's something that you like, but what's the repercussion and blowback going to be, and putting it down as a permanent record of a way that
Yeah,
you
well,
were at a
and
time.
you know I go back to the most important lesson I learned back in 2008 is, like, there's a lot of reward to be found right on the other side of your comfort zone.
Mm,
And
mm.
like, this is speaking directly to where that reward is going to be found, because it is in fact right on the other side of your comfort zone. It's not even that deep or far into it, but it's right there. You can almost see it from your comfort zone. Um, and just that little bit of worry and discomfort, probably more of a good thing than a bad thing. It tells
Yeah,
you you're doing the right thing.
I mean, everybody, you all have said some poignant and affecting things that I'm really feeling, and that articulates, some of the mentioning that I'm not in a super creative period right now, and that the rewards being so close. It's a little bit frustrating to think how close they are. And,
They are.
but for moving my hand slightly to the left while it's hovering over the pointer, and clicking a thing, we're not talking about a lot of effort, but the emotional distance between uh, treating yourself in a professional manner and being the character that you are, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think I'd like to take a moment to breathe on that, since there is like some heavy, awesome stuff that y'all have said, and I want to think about it. I'm going to rewatch this one and hear it instead of thinking ahead to what we're going to talk about next, to talk about what's actually going on in my head while I'm trying to also have be present and attentive. Authenticity. Anybody want to jump in with something interesting, obstacles this week, something new that's going on, something a little lighter and easier to talk about, Alex?
I thought we could talk about resampling, but maybe that's a better topic if Carl is here.
Why? Because he's got 3 Emaxes.
Yeah,
I
sampler guy.
I think it would be excellent to talk about when he's here. I will say that the topic can probably turn to which samplers to actually play the sample up an octave, resample, then play it back down 2 octaves or whatever your technique is, versus just using your bit crusher and bit sample rate reducer plugins. Do we want to get into that? Because I think we can talk about it now and also when Carl is here, and there's plenty of room for it.
Yeah, it's basically the idea. I recently sampled a keyboard of mine because I can't bring it with me, and I just wanted to have the patch available. I just needed like 4 notes and not even the full thing. And I thought it would be an interesting topic because I think that's something gearheads often fall into. Not so much if you just use VST plugins, but if you just love your hardware synthesizers, keyboards, I think that's something worth considering, especially if you want to play live.
Yeah. So Ivan's gonna have something to say about it for sure. I can see that. I've had like sort of a weird, holy sort of prescriptive attitude about this preciousness of, if a thing is a synthesizer, let it synthesize and don't sample it. And obviously there's a million exceptions to that, and there's people who have made entire careers out of never playing the analog synth and always sampling it and playing the samples, and it's just a workflow. My things that I find most exciting to resample aren't because I can't bring the thing with me. It's because the precise repetition of that sound or the time and pitch stretchingness are aesthetically better than the original, or and I mean listening wise, you hear it better, whatever the judgment I'm making at the minute is. And I was getting kind of philosophical already, but the function of doing this resampling for me has been a creative sound design process personally. I hope somebody has a different attitude about this, in that, yeah, if I have to give a drum machine back, I'm going to sample the drums off it. If I don't own a particular drum tone that I want to use on my album because it's 1992 and I don't have access to a drummer, they'll sample them. It's functional. But the literally having 2 samplers with very different architectures. My Akai stuff is all interpolation smooth. It gets dull as you transpose down. And my Yamaha doesn't seem to interpolate at all. It just seems to play the bits one at a time, and you hear the crunchy edges of them and they don't smooth. Totally different effects. So I would choose, and this is dating things a little bit, but if I wanted something to get a character, like Preacher sample with that lo-fi, sounds like something on the first 3 Skinny Puppy albums, play it off of the original thing, or whatever it is, a tape or a video or something that I have, put it in the Akai so that I can play it up higher, sample that at 2x or 4x into the Yamaha, and then transpose that down without the interpolation, so it stays crispy, stays bright, but is now lo-fi and has all this musical warbling around the syllables and has artifacts, craziness. That's my thing. So also events that I wanted to preserve in amber, so to speak. Like, this is a thing that's only going to happen once. The guitar amp is dying. Here's the tone. Make a sample set of that. Now we play them back in their signature sounds. So yeah, I could probably have, there's more when I stop and think about it. But let's jump to Ivan. Hear what you have to say.
So I do have a collection of very old, very difficult to replace hardware synths, like the Alita. The Soviet Union is not about to come back and make replacement parts. These are bits of equipment that they will never travel. Living in the studio is the only thing that they will ever actually do. At which point, I've got a Eurorack piece that will just go through and sample an instrument, pumps out the MIDI, and then pulls back the audio and does a note for note all the way across the keyboard, which is great because now the patch on one of those synths will live forever as it was written. And that does it in nice high resolution, so like all of the nuances of it survive. And in that use case, that works wonderfully. At the same time, I'm spending, doing some experimentation with using other using effects to make a VST sound more like physical hardware than it did as a VST. And that is it doesn't take a lot, but it makes a difference. And there was a whole YouTube video where somebody was working with that inspired me to start giving it a try, and whoa,
Sure.
it does work nicely.
So you made the bold statement that once you've done the multi-sample, you've got the sound, and it's you have it. And my argument is you don't. Like, I think you've got a different sound. You've got a sampled event, of, it's not as bad as doing like one shot 16th notes of the same drum over and over without left right samples or velocity splits. But it is,
when you're sampling a synth, I mean, you're either getting the signal that's coming off of it or you're not.
well, here's my specific, like, let's put this into electronic terms. When your DCOs start at the zero crossing and they all fire off at the same time and you hit a note, even if you've got a stack of DCOs, they're triggering from the zero crossing and they sound the same every single time. If you switch to free run and your digitally controlled oscillators are now triggering off at different parts of their cycles and they mesh differently, you've got a subtle difference every single note you press. Maybe it's a 3 oscillator synth and each of those has a slightly different part where and you don't hear this stuff. You don't necessarily hear it, but when you obsess about it and all you care about is like the fucking wave front, exactly how my DCOs are lining up because I want them to be more like an actual VCO, I can't replace that with a sampled version of it. I just can't do it still. Maybe
the Alita is VCOs and it's monosynth, so you're never
2 oscillator
3
per voice, 3 oscillators per voice. Okay, so yeah, same thing. These 3 oscillators are not going to be the same phase together every 16 times you hit it. It's just not going to happen,
especially on that piece of equipment.
Yeah, right.
But it will get close enough that I'm happy.
Big difference.
And then, I still have the opportunity, if I need to mess with the opening and closing of the filter while it's playing, I can run that out through to a physical filter anyways, and it still sounds good.
It does.
the
You've
important
decided
part
it
is,
sounds good and it suits your
does
purposes.
it
There's no
sound
argument there.
good is
Yeah.
the most important, question to answer on this. If it does, then if you more importantly, if you don't tell anybody, do they notice the difference?
Well, yeah. I mean, that I did try to start off admitting defeat before I went into this battle. That nobody's nobody's
But
paying attention to
in
this except for
other
you.
news,
Yeah.
as part of getting my third floor back, I do need to go get a truck rental taken care of. So I got to roll. Have a
All right.
great day, everyone.
Perfect, man. Good talking to you, and take it easy. Alex, you
Here, Ivan.
are we talking in the right direction, or have we gone off the rails on what you're even getting at?
I was thinking more in terms of the actual workflow, but that the direction it went into was right with me as well. Yeah, I think you're right that it isn't the same, but at the same time, if the alternative is not taking the sound with you,
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a valuable asset, and especially with the sample, like the storage costs that have been going down and down and down.
Yeah,
It
I mean, you probably have a laptop with you for the storage, so it's
right.
in many cases, if we're even talking about that, rather than just the sampler, which you might have to load disks or something.
So usually the time it takes to cut the thing is much more costly than the storage of it, and
Mhm, mhm. Well, workflow wise, I mean, does Ivan's utility that he was referring to that auto samples and gives you key splits and ostensibly maybe even velocity layer splits on a sample bank, have you ever explored that, or is that beyond
yes,
exactly what you're
I
talking about?
wanted to try Sample Robot, but I
Yeah.
haven't because of money, but it's something on my bucket list. And the thing I did is just record drum sounds with different velocity layers, and it's saved my ass several times because I can just usually I record a sound and then I think, that doesn't. I wish that the kick drum wasn't as distorted, and I can just go one velocity layer back. Have
Yeah,
like
I
a
find the sample in the like I do them if I'm going crazy. I do like left right hits at 4 or 5 velocities just to be fun. Have a huge, not huge, but a larger collection. But it gets you a whole bunch of hits to choose from, and I definitely have had that stupid meticulous experience of going, is it the hit 1, hit 2 at velocity layer 125 or 123? Oh, there's the one I wanted, and making sure that the sequencer represented that hit for that 16th note in that bar. And it's kind of fun. It might be obsessive and keep you from ever finishing a project, but it is part of the insanity of workflow of multi-sampling. That said, what I found more fun and immediate and in the moment was playing in phrases and sampling those phrases and cutting them up by hitting MIDI keys. Back in the day, I mean, you do it more by moving stuff around on a audio clips on a timeline now than I do sampling phrases in. But initially, having just like, oh, there's a rototom, hit some phrases, and then you've got a little library, and you can make a song. With these room and human variations, and you're not editing the individual hits. You're just letting it play out, and you maybe have to repitch it so it fits the tempo of your song, and you've got a new, novel, interesting little piece of sound that nobody else has. That totally cool, sampling wise. I think, Brett, do you have anything you want to throw in on that? I mean, I'm talking about sampling drums, and you've got the drum kit sitting right over your shoulder there, making me think I want to go do something.
That's right. In terms of sampling drums, or in terms of sampling for me, I know the method that Alex is talking about, and it's been a number of years since I've really put that to effect. When I did put it to effect, I was actually trying to basically resample the sound of a glass breaking.
Yeah.
And I literally threw it on the ground, recorded it, and then I tried to get it, and I was taking advantage of every nuance you could get. It was early bit crushing and all that other stuff as well. These days, sampling for me is probably more straightforward. where because of how DAWs have come into play and their influence on sampling, um, yeah, I just treat it way differently. Now there's a lot more of, okay, I want this piece in the middle of that to repeat, but every time it repeats, I want the length it takes to play that sample to be shortened by a quantity, and I either want the pitch to ultimately go up or down or both, depending on what that sample actually is.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of room for creativity there, especially since, I'm thinking sampling, we're not talking about the time and pitch decoupled. I think, like, oh, if you pitch it down, the time goes up. It's, of course, how else are you going to do it? But yeah, it's not how things necessarily work. I mean, I'll also say that I haven't really powered up my hardware samplers to do anything with them I don't think I even used them on the last 2 albums at all, because the convenience and having a full on-screen with mouse and everything of a sampler on screen,
Yeah.
it's pretty liberating and fast and easy to work with. And whatever your workflow was with the hardware sampler, if you've got 7 Emaxes, then you might be dedicated to using them. If you have 13 Emaxes, you might want to get more mileage out of that. I think that the limitations of old samplers is an awesome thing, and also the tone and sound of them is generally a really desirable thing. And there's things that you do with those that are the unexpected. Like, what you can get out of them, but let's see what it actually ends up sounding like. Alex, do you want to jump back in?
Yeah, I mainly work with a sampler that's still being made, at least in its latest iteration, in the Octatrack, and
Right.
there, especially if you have everything on quarter notes, you can just automatically slice it. So you minimize your work. And if you have like a sequence with the different velocities that you can just record as a loop, then it's super easy to just straight away use that. And I had something else to say, but I forgot it. So
Well, hold that thought. If it comes back, and if it doesn't, then that's okay too. I was wondering, have you spent time in Ableton Live just letting it do clips and automatically finding
yeah,
transients and stuff?
I haven't fully done that because I always forget if I'm about to. Then I start a tutorial and then I forgot what I wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think Ableton works for me the best if I treat it like a hardware sampler.
Yeah. Well, there's 4 or 5 ways that come to mind really fast about treating it like a hardware sampler. There's the actual sampler, which you can do key splits and velocity splits and all the crossfades and stuff like you'd normally do. There's the drum rack, which is a slot-based sampler. There's the simpler, which is a 1-lane sample holder. And then there's the timeline itself, which is, it's a visual waveform sampler, and you can move stuff and they quantize and stick. And so there's so many ways to use it like a hardware sampler. Do you vibe with any of those in particular?
Yeah, basically the drum rack like an MPC and the simpler like my Octatrack.
Yeah. I have loaded several old school CD-ROMs from like Akai and stuff, or from S5, the 550, the Roland sampler library formats, into the big sampler in Ableton, and they load fine. The crossfades and key splits are all there and stuff. But it's not as fancy as using something like with a little bit of scriptiness like Contact has, where you can do key switches and articulation changes.
I think they took that functionality out in Ableton 10 or something.
I think you're right. Yeah, I
need to
ran into that because my hard drive is full of library of CD-ROMs that are just in Akai format, and all of a sudden I can't find something to translate them so that they're useful again. Thanks, Ableton.
Yeah, but that's the use case for old computers. Anyway.
Yeah. It's true. I could just fire up one of the things that's sitting behind my desk, not plugged into a screen, and load it on that. Or I could there's a S950 sitting right there. I could just put a CD drive attached to that's in the closet. I'm happy to entertain another topic or go on with this one or wrap it up? Does anybody have anything that they want to talk about that's happening this week? Feeling good? Gonna go make some noises and disseminate music throughout the world?
We've
Well,
got
yeah.
a
I don't
new show
know what
this
it is
Wednesday
yet.
for.
All right.
Go ahead.
Hey, say again, Diana.
We've got a new show, New Music O'Clock this week, hosted by Dave Nato, who has been a drummer on Angelspit's tracks.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. Is that going up on this Wednesday, you say?
This
the new
Wednesday
music?
at 5 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. GMT.
Well, hopefully this will be up during the day Sunday or maybe even evening Saturday, May 30th Eastern time. But depending on when it does go up, get thee to watching that show live and being in the chat because it's a good time. I go whenever I can, and sometimes I lurk. That said, I think it's time to wrap it up, and I'm going to hit the button that stops the recording from happening. Thank you so much. Lots to think about. Really enjoyed having the opportunity to hear from y'all. So until next time, stop button and now.